you that don't know me, my name is Deb. If you're on FetLife, I'm known as the Kink Shrink. It was a joke many years ago. I messed up. Funny, I was talking to my supervisor who runs Pink Therapy. Dominic, he's my supervisor, and we were talking about experts, and we were saying, is there any such thing as an expert in kink? And is there anything as an ignorant? And we're like, there isn't, and we keep saying there isn't. But he was very sweet. He did say if he ever had a question, he would regard me as one of the top 2 people to talk to in the UK. Yay. So that's quite nice. Thank you very much. So the idea of this workshop is that you have a question and we answer it. We start talking and we see where it goes. And it can be anything to do with kink, anything to do with power exchange, authority transference, polyamory, communication, play, consent, you name it. It can also be to do with mental health connections. It can be to do with the psychology and the psychology of kink and polyamory, everything. So, and these workshops go anywhere and everywhere. I never have any idea where they're going. I just hope I know the answers. I'm not superstitious at all. And if I don't know the answer, maybe someone else will. You never know, do you? You never know who's around. It'd be interesting if I really, really had no idea about the answer. I would love one of those questions. So dig deep. It's quite exciting when you get those. We've been running these for about 8 years now. I came to Cosmic and I said, no one on the scene is running a psychology workshop. Why don't we start something like that? Why don't we do something a bit different? And the idea was that we would run it down and it would eventually not be anything, but very privileged, very lucky that that hasn't happened yet. The idea was it'd be a small group like in there after a while, like 3 or 4 people. We could just have chats, but it hasn't worked out that way, which I'm very grateful for anyway. So what normally happens is I say, over to you, who's got a question? And everyone goes, it's like they're just concentrating on not shitting themselves for 5 minutes. And then it builds up, and then people do have questions. Oh, I've got and then we're on at the end. It does get a bit uncomfortable on your arse. If you need to move around a bit, just move around, because 90 minutes on these chairs is not the most comfortable. I might take it offensively. And if you need to go for a wee, I will pick on you entirely and humiliate you. That's fine. I won't. I might, depend. If I fancy you, definitely. I'm not normally at all. I'm really sorry. I used to switch years ago. Look, I've been in kink for 41 years since I was 17. And I'm 58. I started young, fuck me. No. So 58 in a couple of weeks I am. So yeah, it's been a long time. It's been a massive part of my life. And I've also watched these really significant changes over that time about what it's been like, what consent looks like, what it used to be like, what it is now. The fads that come along with kink, we all say, oh, it's not, it's just very much my calling, but actually it's really interesting to watch the social fads, the cultural fads, cultural, fuck me. I talk today, sorry. That is really interesting to see those fads and what happens as time goes on, and there are loads of them, and they tend to come in sort of like 7-year cycles, like lots of things do, like that 7-year itch. So it's been interesting to be a part of this world for a really long time. So the idea is we start with you. Who has got a question they would like to ask?
Brilliant. Given you've seen those cycles, what's the next fad?
Ooh. Well, the current fads are, well, see, don't take this offensively. Well, actually, if you take it offensively, I can't stop that. So I apologise up front if you take this offensively, okay? So the current fads are polyamory and daddy. When I started, daddy was not around. If you were called daddy or you called someone daddy, you were a fucking paedophile who just wanted someone under the age of 12. It was a completely different world. Whereas then when you look at the history of daddy and you look at the culture of the world, the word daddy, you've got to go into very different heritages and cultures. So you've got a massive movement, especially when you go into Afro-American culture and heritage. You've got a massive influx of daddy and daddy relationships. If you look at 1930s type songs, 1920s type songs, I'm mad about my daddy. You've got some really cool songs going on at different times, and that's very much that power exchange relationship because of what women were. However, it's much more in black culture than it was anywhere else at all. It then came into white culture, especially with songs, jazz, blues, Billie Holiday, lots of different people that came through at that time. It massively got taken up by gay culture. especially gay kink culture, daddy became a really big thing. It then went into generic culture, it was a lot more. You even had songs that made it slightly different, like Daddy Cool, different songs when you start to hit the 70s and the 80s. So the whole daddy culture has been really interesting. But it's not often done in film in different places. There was a film, a couples therapy film when they went to an island, and again, still interestingly, culturally, it was a younger black woman calling a much older partner, black partner, said, Daddy, what can we do today? Daddy, what are we going to do? It's very Americanized. In England, we're like, Daddy. I said, Father. No, fuck me, Daddy. Oh, yes, a little more. Gosh, that's good. Right, so it's quite interesting because we've got that weird stiff upper shit lip going that we do have in English culture. So Daddy wasn't, but for the last sort of like 7, 8, 9 years, Daddy's really come into play, and age play has really come into play. When that goes, I don't know. It's interesting. Or will it go? Will it stay? We do have. I'm a polyamorous queer woman. I'm a polyamorous queer Jewish woman. Actually, that's my heritage. And however, my relationships tend to be heterosexual more often than not. So I'm demi. It's just going to go through this list. So like for me,
bingo card out.
I know. Yeah. So like for me, I have had a lot of sex in my life, a lot. And when people say, "What are your figures?" they're probably higher than you think, and they are. They're very high. I've had a really great time and I've enjoyed my life. It's not what I want anymore. I'm really aware what I want is a connection. It is all about a connection. Most sex, when we have it, is very hormonally based. It's pretty mediocre. First time sex is exciting because it's first time sex often for people. First time sex with a human being, especially if they assume they know what they're doing, which a lot of people do, and they are not right. And we also don't communicate well about sex. We don't communicate about what we want, why we want it, and how we want it, especially if we own a cunt. Women are much worse at this than men on average, because we're taught not to ask for what we want. We're taught not to ask for pleasure. That's the history as it goes through. Now, hopefully it isn't always like that, and it is changing. And if you look at a lot of websites like OMG and Oh My God, Yes, and there is one here if you want to come and see it. There are lots of things now, lots of research into sex, which is pretty cool. Is it fully inclusive yet? No, it's like most things, it's based on white men. And it really is. That is the tradition of medicine, of research, of everything else as well. Slowly but surely that is changing, but it's not going to change in my lifetime. The research is being done now. Maybe in 100 years we'll truly have inclusive research, but it ain't happening yet. So that daddy culture, who knows? Maybe it'll go or change slightly. Polyamory is slightly different. People are feeling different about their lives, feeling different about themselves. We can argue that kinksters and polyamorous are born this way. Oh, there's an interesting argument, isn't it? Am I born this way or am I made this way? Anyone got a theory? What do you think? If you're kinky and or poly, do you think you're born or do you think you're made? Both. Mix.
Made because I'm drinking my parents.
Well, actually, there's been studies and people say both.
People say both.
Well, isn't a monogamous relationship strongly tied to religion?
Monogamy is tied to religion. However, if you go back previously to cultures where there are religions, and we go back thousands of years, actually polyamory was everywhere, and multiple connections were everywhere. There are still, oh God, can't remember the name of this particular tribe. Fuck, why can't I remember? It really annoys me. But they have this beautiful principle whereby you stay with your family, and when a woman wants a child, she will go to you because you've got a beautiful smile. She will go to you because you've got the hair that I love. She will go to you because you've got the beard, and she will go to all these different people and have sex with them on a multiple basis because she wants her child to be imbued with all these wonderful qualities. I fucking love that. Look, we know scientifically that's not true, but how awesome is that? Because if you give birth to a child and you believe that that's what your child's going to be, your child has a much better chance of being anything you want it to be anyway. Whereas if you go, what the fuck is the dad? It's just, it changes things, doesn't it? So when we've got that positivity and that hope, so culturally, actually, if you go back really, really going to Mayan culture, you go back into ancient cultures, polyamory was around a lot. Religion did then change that. Certain religions, but not all. That's the problem. So it depends on what region you live in and what region has that dominance in that religion. There are multiple religions that are very controlling around marriage, but there are multiple religions that also say polyamory is also okay. In the UK, you can't have a polyamorous marriage. However, if you have a polyamorous marriage outside, if you go somewhere legal and get married to 3 or 4 people, and you come over here, each of those marriages is recognised in the UK. So the key is to fuck off and get married, and then bring 3 or 4 wives and husbands back. So you just got to know your way around the law somewhat. That's all. That's the idea of all of this, isn't it? You've certainly got a couple of American states.
Google is your friend.
Google is your best friend. But there are other countries who have horrific laws and rules. The French concept of consent is terrifying to me. The Nigerian age of consent is terrifying to me. It's 11 years old. It's the lowest in the world. So the French concept of consent, and it is starting to change, is that if you do not fight back physically, it is a form of consent. So anyone hear French? It's changing with people, isn't it? So I have a Swiss passport. I speak French, my family speak French and English and German and Swiss and Italian because we're a fucking nightmare around the dinner table. My friends will say to me, I'm so glad I can practice my French. And in 3 words, you've got 3 different languages, so it's a nightmare, but that is typically Swiss. So French law, even if you have, unfortunately, an underage human being raped or attacked, if they don't fight back, it's still considered consensual. It is changing in the people, it is not changing in the law yet. See, this is the problem, that we can talk about kink, and we can talk about sex, and we can talk about poly, we can talk about all of these things, and we can talk about our rights. We can talk about should be this way. We can. Don't matter if you can't fucking prove it in law. This is the problem that we have. Are you aware? Anyone here kinky? Is that why you're here?
No.
I can back your rings for you. Oh, no.
Not that story. No.
Somebody brought it up yesterday. I was in Portsmouth teaching a workshop on consent, and I was teaching a workshop on communication.
You had to go there, didn't you?
Well, no, it wasn't me. And he, do you want to come in? Do you want to, there's a seat there, there's 2 seats over there. Do you want to come and sit down? Yeah, there's some more out there. Come along if you want to. Hello. There's one there, a few there. Right. So I tell this story. So when there's risk in everything we do, right? It is naive to think, even if you. One of the points I made yesterday in this consent workshop is I don't think consent exists. How shocking is that, right? I do not think fully inclusive consent exists in any way, shape, or form. I will teach consent till I'm blue in the face. I will tell you how to ask for it, how to agree it, what to do. I will give you 4 or 5 tools. I will give you methods of communication to help you. However, how can you truly consent to something if you don't really know how it's going to be, or you don't know how that person is going to be with you, or you don't know the long-term implications of what you're about to do? So when you consent, you're consenting as good as it fucking gets in the moment. That is what consent is. You don't know what you're going to feel like. My hips are really hurting at the moment, right? I've lost 3 stone, and that's maybe something to do with it. But I can really feel the pain in my hips. Now, I could go to a doctor and I can say that my first career, I was in performance and related arts, used to perform and do stuff. Then I did an MBA, and then I did an MSc in psychotherapy. So I've had an interesting go into what I'm doing. But my hips really hurt when I lay on them. It's got fuck all to do with dancing. It's got everything to do with like being punched so fucking hard it split my bursa. I didn't know because I like ultra violence. Not so much anymore, but I certainly did then. So if I'm bent over in front of me and they're ramming into me, I like being punched. It's something I particularly love. But it split the bursa in my hips, which means I have steroid injections twice a year. And when you're lying there like that and the doctor's going, this won't hurt much, fucking lying cunt. I mean, it's been a while since I've came out. You're like, oh God, and you've got the slight tears and you know it's going to bruise up and hurt for the next 3 or 4 days. Yeah. You then, at that point, you just think, I don't fucking know. Would I have consented to the impact on me now? That's an interesting question, isn't it? So I think we have to think about that, but I'll come back to you in 1 minute, I promise. So the story was that many, many years ago, I met this person. I was just wearing a coat and a pair of heels. Fuck off if I'm wearing a pair of heels nowadays. Uggs or slides or whatever, that's what's comfy. But coat and a pair of heels in a hotel, whip the coat off, pillow over the head, go in, doing lots of stuff, all consented to, all agreed to. I think as well, what we've got to start to realise is we need the opt-in method, not the opt-out. Sometimes when we're discussing, what we're saying is this okay, is this okay, is this okay? But then we don't talk about anything else. But the problem is with that method is that this pile, the iceberg underneath, is not discussed. Just the tip is, because we want to talk about the sexier things. However, really what we need to do is there is nothing okay on the table until we include it. That's a very different method of having that discussion. So we haven't, so all of a sudden I feel this interesting implement inside my cunt. And I'm like, okay, I don't actually know what that is. That's quite interesting. And then I feel this searing pain and I feel the flood of blood. Because basically this person had put a balloon whisk inside me and I had a coil in. The coil got wrapped. I don't know how it happened. And it pulled and my coil came out with it. Now, coils really tend to fold up when you pull the strings. That's the idea when they come out. If they're ripped out of you, it doesn't quite work that way. So me and the bed sheets were bleeding quite a lot. And I ended up at A&E. When would you ever ask would you actually say to anyone, no matter how knowledgeable, do you have a balloon whisk in your toy bag? Did anyone ever ask that? No, exactly. I do every time. What kitchen implements do you use? Because they were like wooden spoons. Wooden spoons are full of bacteria and they split and they don't wash particularly well in your kitchen. I love a wooden fork to make spaghetti. I like the way it twists and the way I can put it round. I love doing that. However, I'm really aware that anything with wood can splinter, and it has different bacteria, different viruses, and different things in it, and it's really complex to wash. And lots of people say, I'm going to put it, you get lots of those TikToks that go, hey, I've just washed everything in the bath liquid, and look what I've done in my bath, and I put boiling water. It's like boiling water with a spoon, but wooden spoon, doesn't mix. So actually, you can't really kill a lot of stuff. So consent and everything is quite an interesting issue. So I don't quite know what's coming. I think we live in an age of over-awareness. Everyone's an expert. All your exes are narcissists and psychos, apparently. We say a lot of words. We're using a lot of words. So I think it'd be interesting to see where it's going to go. Sometimes things get worse before they get better. I've got a little bit of a feeling it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. Because we're becoming more austere and controlling, actually, before we then become more liberal, normal right-left swings.
Consent is a strongly legal-based.
It's a strongly legally based thing, and actually, if you're going to take that thing, I suggest you don't do kink at all. So if you're going to go for the legal distinction of consent in the UK and in most states in America, you cannot consent to violence against you. So if you cannot, who here has ever given or had a love bite? Put your hand up. I said this yesterday, this person went, oh, fuck, straight away. She was brilliant. She just had loads, and so did her partners. They were just covered in them. And I went, well, technically, you've broken the law. Now, no judge is going to prosecute you on a love bite, right? They're not. However, when people invest a lot of money, like with the Spanner case, which gave us the law, it didn't. So the original law is from the 1800s, but the Spanner case reiterated it. So the problem is with violence, if you leave a mark on somebody which is more than trifling or transient. Anyone here ever had more than a trifling or transient marking? So I mean, that's from a cardboard box, but that was my top that day. See, but the thing is, martial arts, boxing, different things fall under a different law because they're sports.
Yep.
We do not fall under that law, even if we try to use that as a form of defence.
We need the Kink Olympics.
Sorry?
We need the Kink Olympics.
Kink Olympics, yeah, we'll be fine. You were going to say?
I was just thinking about the whole you can't consent, and in your specific case, you consented to some bodily harm that has had ramifications later in life. I'm wondering if there's a parallel to all the people who go to concerts and gigs where the music is loud.
Oh,
and
yeah,
that will damage your hearing. So can you consent to that? Is it?
There's a waiver in any gig.
There is.
Says you have to look after your own hearing. If you go deaf, it's your fault. Not very interesting.
But is there a limit there that you might go, yes, I accept?
You accept.
Yeah.
You accept without limits.
Oh, no, I mean to go on to say that if you say accept being whipped, it's known that it's because I wasn't finished. Okay, good.
So, but it falls under actual grievous and even so when we actually look at bodily harm, if I would come up to you and I'll just go, oh, fuck fucking hit you, that is, it's actually bodily harm. So you have to look at just threatening somebody or even threatening. The laws changed for domestic violence a few years ago, and they changed to include the more psychological stuff. Now, if you think if you've got a full authority transference or power exchange relationship, you're guilty of domestic violence by default. You're not, because somebody consented, but the law does not allow you to consent. Now, there are some changes afoot, which is interesting. It's funny enough, because I've even got them written here, so I know these, because I was talking about them yesterday. So the NCSF, which is in America, and we tend to follow the Americans, are looking at explicit prior permission. And they're pushing for us to get EPP through as a legal base. But listen to this, I'll tell you what it says. Weird, I've got this. You must discuss and agree to the specific things you're going to do and the intensity of the activity before you start. This includes any kind of sexual contact. You must have a way to stop at any time, like a safe word or a safe signal. That completely counts anyone out who's into CNC. So consensual non-consent is our choice to say, you do what the fuck you want to me, I agree with it. Also, let's say I want to be woken up with your cock inside me or your fist inside me. I can't do that according to this. So it's only certain things that it would legalise. You agree beforehand what role play resistance is okay to ignore, like no or stop. Everyone must be of sound mind. I don't mean to be funny. I'm a professional. I sit down with people for months sometimes and I go, oh. I do, because maybe that person's got quite severe personality disorder. That's not their fault. We're not talking about blame or anything negative, but we're also going, oh, okay, that has a big impact. Are you doing this because of a trauma response? Are you doing this because you want to? I mean, Jesus, when we start to look at fight, flight, freeze, we forget friend, fuck, flop, phone, fawn. There are many of them. There aren't just fight, flight, freeze. And if you're a fucker or a fawner, good luck with that when it comes to sex, because that's exactly what we do. Okay, you do not have to put your hands up. Has anyone here ever been in a sexual position, I don't mean literally a position, but in a position where you think, oh my God, I'd rather just finish this than stop it because I don't know what's going to happen and it could get worse. But around the room, it's a lot of people. So it's something to really think about. And not intoxicating or having a mental health crisis. Define intoxication. Again, in different countries, legally, different countries talk about different legalities to how much is drunk or how much is incapacitated. Different countries have different rules around what drugs you take and what is incapacitated and what is not.
Actually, in terms of that, during certain activities, I know the endorphins quite intense, and you feel like you're drunk. And I wonder if that then counts as being intoxicated. What happens after that?
Yeah.
Could put your judgment in.
Well, it absolutely puts your judgment. When you are in a turned-on state, your oxytocin goes through the roof. I always say, don't make a hormonal mistake, make a judgmental decision. If you make a hormonal mistake, then we make those mistakes a lot because that sexual chemistry is raging and all of a sudden all your sense disappears because those fucking fanny flutters are completely taking over, or that, the cock's bouncing and it's all you're thinking about. And actually, it's something you're going to regret, and that's your hormones talking. And we've really got to watch that because that sort of thing can make a difference as to where we go with what's agreed and what isn't. You aren't allowed to seriously injure someone. I don't know about you, I'm big go, okay, right? So I had chemo a few years ago, and I ended up with 2 lung clots in each lung because of the chemo. So I was on blood thinners for 8 months in total. Boy, did I bruise differently then. What is serious bodily harm? Again, the law dictates very little. A bruise. That cardboard box is in jail, trust me, right? It's in that blue bin, it's never coming out. So you have to think about that. So you're not allowed to seriously injure someone, which includes permanent marks or the risk that comes with erotic choking. Anyone here into choking? Not anymore, you're not, you're in jail. Anyone here into marks? Not anymore, you're not, you're in jail. Right, so it's really interesting. So even half of what we're pushing for legally is still going to impact us. It then goes on to say, because I just screenshot it because I was like, fuck. Explicit prior permission does not apply when permission is withdrawn. Now, this is interesting to me because I had a client who was stealth. You know what stealthing is?
Yeah.
It's the choice to remove a condom by the person wearing it without telling the person who's receiving. Unfortunately, even though she said she gave permission, she didn't give permission. So she said very clearly, no unsafe sex, must be protected sex only. But during this frenzied state where we're talking about chemicals, she's like, fuck, do anything you want to me. Condom comes off, he's back in. Now, do you think she really gave permission for that? I don't think she did. But he heard what he wanted to hear. And legally, he is right in that scenario. She gave permission, do anything you want to me. I mean, clearly, if he were to murder her, slightly different. But we've got to think about these things. If someone is unconscious, asleep, or incapacitated.
Oh, sorry, I have another question, but it's not related to this.
All right, I'll be back in 1 second, I promise. So again, CNC, if you like to be woken up with a fuck, or your partner's asleep and you think, oh, I know, I'll go down on them. Regardless of their gender, I'll wake them up with my tongue inside them, on them, around them, or up their arse. Or I'll wank, this will be fun. You can be done. Anyone here like that or has ever done that in the past? Like, you're all in jail too.
You're really going to be fun. Gathered everyone that we want.
Anyone here out of jail so far? No, okay. Permission given by gesture or non-verbal conduct, assent, is not explicit, therefore is vague. Now, that's also an interesting one, because if you're gagged or blindfolded or whatever, then what if you have a signal system? What if you have a system if you drop the bouncy ball that's coloured or bright and it goes off? What if you have a noise system where you drop it?
Or if you're mute. Yeah.
Or if you're mute or deaf and you sign? If you are non-verbal when you are in trauma or you go into something. I have a client who has chosen not to be verbal for the last 5 years of his life. He is 18 years old. He does not speak. We're slowly getting there. He's starting to do stuff. He's an amazing, amazing young man. It's going to take a long time. His mum's like, she can get it fixed by September when he goes to uni. Oh, probably not. But no one else will see him. He's way too complicated for the NHS. Do you know, it's crazy, isn't it, where we go with this stuff? So, again, that's quite interesting. Clearly, if somebody's under the age of 18, well, that's interesting. What's the legal age to have sex in the UK?
16.
So we're telling 16-year-olds they can't have kinky sex till they're 18?
And the fun part about that one, what I love about one in the UK is age consent 16, age of consent watching porn is 18. Yeah. So you're not allowed to video yourself, because if you watch it afterwards, you're breaking the law. You're also breaking the law by videoing it.
Yeah, this is one I remember the sex is.
Well-
You can now have sex with your eyes closed. That's what the teacher said to us, is you can't watch anything until you're 18.
Three years ago, there were 2 children that were put on the sex offenders register. They were both 14 and a half to 15. They're on the sex offenders register for the next 10 years of their life. It was the first case that's been tried where they were found guilty. And they were found guilty because they sent pornographic images of each other to each other. They've been done for paedophilia. I mean, is that right? So the law is a bit of a fucker when it comes to our consent and how it works. So I thought that was interesting, the whole express pilot stuff. It's not definitely coming through, that's what they're pushing for in the States. So that's their premise, that's what they want to get slowly but surely. You can ask the question.
Probably when we go on around these, but I'm kind of trying my best.
What?
So, I have anxiety, and more than likely from that, as I think many of us do. How, my question is sort of, how can I best ensure that I look after myself when I'm, I'm single now. I want to try and sort of
Go out there and do stuff.
yeah, and like I think I'm at a stage in my life where I'm starting to feel confident to be on my own, and I don't want to lose that. So I want to try and, as much as possible, even if I do make mistakes, what is the best process for kind of healing from that, or preparing for that, if that makes any sense?
It makes complete sense. So it's all to do with the risk of if I go out and I have anxiety and I have trauma, how can I communicate that? How can I make sure I get listened to? How can I be respected? How do I not give in? How do I not people please? And how does my anxiety not stifle me from asking for what I want and stopping someone else from doing what they want? Roughly?
Yeah, and you know, if worse happens and something goes wrong, what is the best way to acknowledge that in a healthy way and not just pretend it didn't happen or kind of, does that make sense?
Well, you're also answering your own question slightly there. So I think, yeah,
I tend to do that.
but let's go backwards for a start. So if you are a very anxious person, you're not very good at discussions and talks and everything else as well, or you're dealing with somebody who's not very good at that, you both have to have excellent communication skills. If somebody isn't listening to you or can't hear or doesn't get it or doesn't check in, they're probably not for you to play with if you're anxious. You can get some experiences by going to someone professional who is paid to make sure that those things happen. I would also suggest that, so trauma therapy isn't talking therapy. 9 times out of 10, if you're going to go see a therapist, please ask them if they're trauma trained, not just if they're a therapist. And dominatrixes, doms, dominers, whatever we want to call everybody of every gender who gets paid to do this, they are not paid, and nor do they know what they're doing when it comes to trauma, unless they're either a fully qualified therapist. Now, you've got counsellors who have done 2 years, you've got psychotherapists who have done 4, and some of those are also postgraduate. However, neither of those qualifications actually qualify you properly to deal with trauma. It's an extra course that you do on top. So ask, do I think it's a good idea to have some form of therapy if you've got quite severe trauma? Yeah, of course I do. It's what I do for a fucking living. So yes, I do think it helps. It helps you to find your voice. But I think the key here is honesty. Honesty is all about timing. If you watch your mate do something and they say, was it good? And you go, no, you were shit. You were fucking awful. Like, your timing isn't very good. But if you say, oh, I love the way you did that part, and then maybe in a few days you have a different conversation about, it wasn't 16 on the whole thing really. Their endorphins, all their norepinephrine, adrenaline, whatever you want to call it, has calmed, so we can have a different conversation. It's the same when you do something kinky with somebody. Right afterwards probably isn't the best time to have a full debrief. A few days afterwards is probably better, especially if somebody is dropping, and everyone can drop. Drop isn't exclusive to kinky people. It is not. If you've been in a show or you're a musician, if you're a fucking cheerleader, if you've just done a comp and you do all these different things, if you're a gymnast, you've been in a competition, if you're a dancer and you've done something, we all get dropped. Because all our chemicals change and we go boom when we hit the floor. If you've done something really exciting all weekend and you think, oh, why the fuck can I get up on Monday? It's probably a form of drop. So again, choosing when to talk is really important. But the major part for me there is owning decisions. One of the things I did when I had chemo was, do I have to have chemo? Well, you're going to die if you don't have chemo. That was kind of a forced decision. But like cancer was my dom for a couple of years. But I wanted to own my choice. So I said to my sister very clearly, remind me whenever I'm crying or I feel like I can't do this and if it starts to go wrong, that it is my choice. I am choosing to do this and I want to own that responsibility. And actually, chemo was a bit of a cunt to me. Each time I ended up in hospital, I was neutropenic, I was ill, I had lung clots, I needed a blood transfusion. It just didn't go that well. I'm still alive, it went brilliant. But on the last one, the night before, I phoned my sister up and she said, hi, you all right? I went, yeah, I'm fine. And she said, everything okay? And I said, no, I'm not going tomorrow. Fucking hate it. Never going again. It's the last one. It doesn't matter. And she said, you know, that's not true. You need your legs. Bear in mind, she has secondary cancer and she was told she had 3 months to live 15 years ago. And she's a nurse. She's a little bit of an expert. And she said, well, okay, do you remember what you told me? I went, yeah, I know, but I don't want to go. But she went, okay, I'll pick you up at 9. I went, okay. When you own a decision, it makes you feel more empowered about it. And it's not if when something goes wrong. When you're about to play with somebody or about to do anything, one of my favourite questions is, what have you done when it's gone wrong? What's your plan for when it goes wrong? If I were to ask you, what's your plan for your next scene for if it goes wrong? Do you know? I'm not asking you clearly because that's what put you on the spot.
She's still in prison.
It's amazing what you do when you're on parole. This tag is just for fun. All right, I'll come to yours. So we have to ask ourselves, and we have to have a plan. Like I'm really going to ask, who here has a medical kit to play? Who here plays? Anyone play? Why not 100% with your hands up to say, have you got a medical kit? What should your medical kit include? Anything that's relative to how you play. Like, you know, if you play with rope, can you get a rope burn? Can you get nerve damage? Look, there's not a lot you can do for nerve damage. There isn't, but there's quite a lot you can do for a rope burn.
Sorry.
Bloody jellyfish principles. But there are lots of things that you can do. Like, for example, there's some fantastic new plaster principles out where you've got two wound closures on either side with zip ties in the middle. So if you do cutting or piercing, and this is quite major, why haven't you got some of those in your kit? They're quite new. They are so cool. I've got them in my cheer medical kit because shit like that happens. Saline gloves, sorted, stuck, boom. Because I tell you what, you might think cheerleading is all pretty. I mean, I've seen the most horrific accidents happen at cheer. More than you've, like, bones through flesh and rhinestones. I don't need to be funny. Those fuckers cut you open like you're playing severely. I've got one kid the other day, she just came straight, Deb, I think my nose is bad. The skin is off her nose. Like, it's just off. And I'm like, right, are you going back on? Am I putting that together? She went, yes, please. Boom, 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 back together, off she goes. Depends what level you want to compete at. So, again, having a first aid kit, but also knowing shit. Knowing what you should do when something goes wrong. Anyone here do breath play? Hands up, anyone? Do you know first aid? Are you first aid trained? Do you know what you're doing if somebody, a very famous, sadly, for all the wrong reasons, a couple of years ago, one of the last major deaths that isn't connected to violence. It's not the guy driving who's totally pissed and choked his wife. This is two drunk people in Scotland deciding to have a fantastic time. He chokes her out. She dies. Now he sort of goes, oh, fuck. He's pissed for a start. Even with EPP, not pissed, not a good idea. He kind of knew, they apparently had a small discussion about they would be happy to phone the police or ambulance. What does he do? He goes for a walk for 45 minutes plus to try and clear his head. She might have been able to have been resuscitated. Jesus, what a decision. So again, it's all about ownership and knowing. It's all about preparation. What will I do? How can I do this? And your mind feels a lot better when you know what you're doing. It's also a really good counter for anxiety. There is always risk in what we're doing. There is risk in relationships. You will feel anxious. You will feel shit. You will feel upset. You will have rejection. You will feel horrible. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and just be prepared for it. It's the same for all of us in King. Somebody will say no to you. Somebody will do something wrong.
Adding on to that as well, I think it's very easy to think of, again, like when having been in a relationship and then single and then back into relationships and having play partners and things like that. But when I reached a point where I was like, oh, I always talk about aftercare with a partner, and people don't talk about the fact that you should have aftercare with yourself, and the fact that you can take going on like this extending on the personal responsibility and the taking responsibility for your choices and your actions. You can always have your own aftercare plan in place. Great, if another person is around, you can ask them to take on elements of that. But if you always have a baseline of this is what I do when I feel shit and it makes me feel better, you are then responsible for that. And you can then when you tap out or if you feel crap, you know how you're handling it. And you can also communicate that to people who aren't partners and aren't, even just friends. Or anyone you know who knows that you're playing or even just dating and just going, hey, even if you don't want to communicate the full extent of things, you can go, hey, I feel a bit shit if I've had a crap date. Can you be my person that I call if I feel shit after a crap date? And they don't need to know what the extent is, but they can.
That's really important. Can you be the person? So my youngest daughter has just sort of like got a bit of an ex and they've been talking. He said, open up to me, talk to me, tell me everything, tell me what's going on for you. So she did, and he went, oh no, I can't handle that. And he's done it to her 3 or 4 times. She's now not talking to him. Look, we can trauma dump on people. It can be too much, and you can't keep using one person. I'll tell you why you should go to your friends, because they're not fucking trying to listen to it. That's why. We can only take so much, and we don't know what to do. I'll come back to you in 1 second, I promise, and I'll come back to you. So again, it's finding those people, but looking after yourself. At the end of the day, the only person who's accountable for you is you. Your risks are yours. And I can guarantee that you can turn around and say, that person assaulted me or that thing went wrong, whereas actually they probably didn't. What happened is there was a clusterfuck. Lots of things go wrong in scenes. I can give you hundreds of stories. Listen, I can also give you hundreds of things that are really positive as well. If I said to you right now, tell me how many people in this room are wearing orange. Have a look. 4 or 5. Right, so look at me. So 4 or 5 are wearing orange. How many are wearing blue? No, you don't. The truth is, you don't know because you weren't looking for blue at the same time as you were looking for orange. You need to look for the positives every day, and we need to look for the good. But you can't see it if you're just looking for the wrong colour. If you're looking for blue. So we need to learn to pick up positives every day and have good experiences, but create them for ourselves. And ask those people sometimes. Right, so you were going to say, and I'll come back to you.
So it's my question is about asking for help and being a sponsor in a sense. Personally, based on experience that you are asking for their permission to help you out. So it's like,
So on the scene, we have mentors. I have a lot of opinions on mentors, right? On the type of mentorship you're going to take on. I think it's a really good thing. For me personally, you can disagree all you like, and that's okay. I think if you're going to have a mentor who is the same sexuality, the same gender, and the same side of the slash as you. So if you are a male submissive, go for a male submissive. If you are a trans cut queen, go for it. I mean, Jesus, it's very difficult to find. Cut queens are pretty rare, really rare here on a cut queen. So we're more rare as such. So I would try and find someone on the same slash. However, do people want to invest in you? Be very careful about that person's experience, what it means. We assume when we look around the room. So who here is doing kink for over 40 years? Anyone? Oh, fuck off then. Over 40 years. Well, I'm going to tell you opposite. No, close, right? Lots of time. However,
I know you never asked about good maths.
However, the assumptions are, how do we know which one of these two, if they're both 35 years, sorry, I'm leaving you out for a second because they both said 35, who's got the most experience? Do you know?
We don't.
We don't.
Just off that, there's not enough information.
No, and how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, scary. 36.
36, and how long have you been doing kink?
Adequately. I'm thinking of the answer, which is, yeah, my mum had me in range, but I don't know if
How long have you legally been doing kink?
probably, realistically, about 10 years.
Okay.
But
so,
like fits and starts at first.
Okay, but that's an interesting point. So 10 years, 35 years, 35 years. How still do we know who's got the most experience? We don't know. We don't know until we ask. And we don't know how often and how long people are doing things and what gaps they've had. They're good questions to ask. If you had a gap, how long have you been doing it? Have you switched? Have you changed? Who are you? It's a good idea to go and find someone. It's pretty difficult to do. So often what a better thing to do is to join groups, to join munches. There are always going to be predators on the scene. My problem with mentors is if you choose someone of the opposite sexuality in that they want you, and you choose someone who is dominant and you're submissive, a lot of those turn sexual pretty fucking well. What a surprise. They turn sexual. And I don't think that's mentoring. That's involvement, that's a relationship, that's a connection. And it impacts how we then learn and what we do.
Then you've always got the 10,000 hour rule.
What's your 10 days makes you an expert?
So the official classification of an expert is having done 10,000 hours on that topic.
And do you know, it's interesting because it comes back to, and I'm still really aware of Kristen, so it's the same with if you see a therapist. You assume, so I'm 58, you don't know how long I've been doing this, you don't know how many hours I've got. So we make lots of assumptions when we see an older therapist. You could have a 30-year-old or a 28-year-old therapist who's got more experience than a 40 to 50-year-old because you don't know when they qualified. My question when I see a therapist isn't, what training have you done? Because we're not fucking registered in the UK anyway, it's a heap of shit. There is no legal licensing for a therapist in the UK. I don't care if you're a member of the BACP or whoever else you're with. It is not a legal licensing system like it is in America. When it is, I'll join one. But what you need to ask me is how many hours have you got, Deb? What you need to ask me is how many hours of therapy have you done yourself, Deb? That's an interesting one because if you've done 20 hours, look, if you've got a counsellor who's done 2 years, I mean, they've done 80 hours of therapy. I do long-term psychotherapy with people sometimes. It's 500 hours. I don't know what their journey is. I haven't done it. Our journeys will be different. However, I want some kind of connection. And sometimes you can meet somebody new who isn't qualified or somebody who isn't qualified and brilliant. One of the best couples therapist courses I've ever been on was a guy called Steve who was not qualified at all. And I learned so much from him. He was fucking brilliant.
I sort of always go, what do you want from a mentor? Because if you go up to the DMs downstairs and go, what
sort of learn flogging. Can you just watch to make sure that I'm
Yeah.
flogging kidneys and whatever? That,
You can get momentary stuff, and you can learn a lot online. You really can learn a lot online, but also what's good online and what isn't. That's the problem, isn't it? No one passes the test. And you see a lot of people stroll around with their best leather trousers on with 33 floggers hanging off it, and their dick is barely down to their knee. But you know, but that arrogance, I'm not sure if that is attractive. Is that good? I want somebody who can talk, who can communicate, and you can get momentary mentors wherever you go, especially in places like dungeons, or you can have chats with people. But I think mentoring is cool if you can find somebody who's right for you. But if not, go to groups, go to munches, join things. There are many groups online where you can have conversations and chats and get to learn different things from different people. There are workshops you can attend. And everyone goes, there's nothing for free. Sorry, I've been running workshops for the last... When COVID hit, made a decision. I was doing 2 workshops a week, one for Lam and one for me, 2 hours each time for each, completely fucking free of charge. And I've carried those on. Yeah, no, I'll run a workshop anywhere if you ask me, because it matters that much to me. I was at Portsmouth yesterday, I didn't ask for any money, paid for my own lunch, they offered me lunch, and I paid for my own parking, and I did 3 hours. And people were asking me in between. I can only give so much, but I'm willing to give. Like this week's workshop on Thursday night, it's 2 hours for free, and it's all about being single in a world where we're all about belonging. I mentioned it earlier. So, and that's quite complex. If you're single and you desperately want to belong or be owned or own or be in a poly group or have something that's really important to us. Because I'm single. Am I looking? Fuck yeah. Am I fussy? Even more fuck yeah. I would rather be alone than have bad quality sex or bad quality play, because my life is fucking awesome. But I've made my life awesome. I've worked really hard at making my life awesome. So it's all about that. And therapy can do that for you. Life coaches can do that for you, but that all costs money. So that's slightly different as well. You were going to say.
It's about finding a therapist who's kind of kink aware. It's not everybody seems to be or desperately positive about it. So any suggestions
Yes.
about what to look for?
Loads.
Is there a
Yeah.
network?
So there are networks. There's the NCSF that I just said. I'm not on any of these networks, by the way, because I don't advertise. I still have a waiting list sometimes, and I go by word of mouth. So there are a few of us that do that. I have a best friend who I would recommend to anyone because I think she's fucking amazing. She's a brilliant therapist. I don't recommend anyone else because I haven't been with them to understand what they're like as a therapist. There are registers. So you've got like the Pink Therapy website, Dominic's website. But there again, I have to pay to be a member of that. I'm not going to pay £80 a year to get something I don't need. And you can do the Pink registry also offer you fantastic courses where you become. So you've got different levels. You've got Kink Aware, which probably means the person has read some books, knows a little bit of something. It maybe isn't a prat about it, but again, go to someone and test them. Honestly, you have a right. Look, you might have to pay for that session, but you have a right to question what's their kink awareness. And I register myself. I'm a kink active therapist. So but the thing is, we still might not get on. Your kink might be totally different to mine, but it's more about the judgment and everything else than it is anything else. However, there's no such thing as non-judgmental. I mean, when you see a therapist's website or you say it, I'm not judgmental. Fuck off. I'm really sorry you are. It's part of what keeps you alive. We're all judgmental. When you came in here and you looked at me, you have an opinion of me and my green floppy dress, my orange hair. You have an opinion. My slider Uggs, my tattoos. I remember once going into a sixth form college with my second eldest daughter, and this lovely young woman came up to me and said, "Hi, would you like to come over to my table?" She was so excited, and I said, "Oh, what's your table about?" And she said, "You're entitled to a grant." And I said, "Am I?" And she said, yeah, you're entitled to a grant. And I said, "What sort of grant?" That's my second daughter, my first daughter. I've got 4 daughters. Fuck me. And they all went to uni. One's just finishing now. Please don't do another year. No, please do. It'd be lovely. Like, really support my kids in whatever they want to do. But you're entitled to a grant. Why am I? Well, because you haven't been to university and you don't have a degree, you're entitled to a grant. I said, "I'm really glad you've asked me and not somebody else. Can I just ask you, what makes you assume or think I don't have a degree?" Then I see her face go. She is like, and I said, "Just I said, I'm going to assume, because I had pink hair at the time, I'm going to assume it's pink hair, and this is just ADHD. I'm not about to have hair. I'm pretty fucking chronic ADHD, trust me. I'll show you a picture of my kitchen. It's all fucking orange. I woke up the other day, and there's a new KitchenAid there. I've spent £500. I don't know how I did it, but it is orange. Hello, ADHD. And I said to her, what's that about? And she said, I went, you saw the tattoos and you saw, I think I had a few more piercings then as well, but I just got my hair done. I said, just so you know, I've got a non-undergraduate degree. I've got an MSc in psychotherapy, I've got an MBA, and I have 8 postgrads. I've been offered 2 PhDs. I'm probably more qualified than most of your teachers. I haven't done those PhDs, I don't want to. I'm really excited about them, they're too expensive, and I want to read them. That's what I want to do. The subjects are really close to my heart. But I don't want to do them. And I don't need to do any more because that's my shit from my dad about you must be more qualified. Even when one of my daughters got her master's, the immediate thing he said was, when are you going to do PhD? Shut up, Dad. Shut up. It's that sort of thing. So we have to be really aware of that pressure and different things that happen and the assumptions we make. So we're all judgmental. The judgment isn't the problem, it's what you do with it. It's what you assume. And it's also a problem when you go to communicate about kink or polyamory or anything else. Your judgment is going to spill out and get in the way of what you assume. What are you going to say?
That's another question.
Go on.
Yeah.
So, sorry, did I answer that? And I said pink therapy and ask questions.
Yeah.
NCSF as well. So those are 2 major websites. NCSF. If you don't remember those, drop me a line on FetLife. I will answer you. If you just tell me so I can write it down for you and remember. Really welcome.
So you're a mum. You also have a fantastic array of achievements. I'm mad respect. How do you balance kind of your sort of like those different identities, if that makes sense? So I'm kind of just starting into a profession that I know is going to be very separate from sort of how I see myself in the geek community. And I want to, in the future, I'd really like to do masters and things like that. But I'm worried that I'm going to lose time. I'm going to struggle to balance kind of different parts of
Identities.
Yeah, and
Look, if you go to the bottom of your garden and you are pruning your roses and Mrs. Jones sticks her head over the gate or the fence, if you live in that sort of community, and she says, how are you, dear? Your answer isn't, oh, my arse is so sore because 3 people came in it last night. Well, I don't think it is anyway. I think you assume it is. I think that's quite interesting. I'm quite a prude for someone who's very open. I am not a believer in separating identities. I have been outed twice in my life and I'm already out. And can I just tell you, when you're outed, the likelihood of it impacting as much as you assume it's going to is not true. That's one of the first things. However, that depends on the work that you do and how you do. There was a case a couple of years ago of a maths teacher who had OnlyFans in a very nice private school. One of the mums found it. He lost his job. I mean, he was doing very pornographic OnlyFans, but my argument is, for fuck's sake, if the mum found it, she was fucking looking. For a start, and why shouldn't he be able to do that? He's not bringing it into the maths class.
they don't get paid much.
I'd agree with that as well. So I also have another client who was NHS staff who unfortunately did a rope picture over their uniform, and that got a bit nasty, but then that was okay because the union came in and stopped that. So things are changing, assumptions are, but the last time I was outed was, I'm out. So, I mean, when someone outs me, it's still an interesting thing because it still happens. There was a picture of me on Facebook, it came up. I was about to do a cheerleading psychology class, and I've been asked to do the nationals. So, it's a really big thing. No one else had been asked. I was the only one in the UK who was asked. And when my picture went up, I noticed a couple of these mums were like, who the fuck is she? And I was like, it's a bit aggressive. Like, why have they asked that? That's quite interesting because my connection to cheer is the only English team to do the Triple Crown, the only English team to win Summit 4 years in a row, the only, fuck me, credentials, right? And it's like, this is interesting, what's going on? They still went for me again and again. So, and then I woke up, I was about to go to sleep, I was in bed and I was scrolling. I don't particularly use a lot of Facebook, but this night I happened to. And there's a picture of me. There's a picture of my website. I just took my website down after it, but I don't need it either. And there's a picture of me from a Plenty of Fish picture, right? That isn't out in public use. Now, when I said this is more revealing, you can see more of my tits in here than you can in this picture. It was a high knitted sweater dress. It came up to here, and I had a pair of over-the-knee boots. So you could see about an inch of flesh, and I was sitting on the floor, and it was a selfie. And it said, "Do not let this fucking paedophile anywhere near your children." That's what it said. And I just went, couldn't breathe. Burst into tears, really scared. I was like, my fucking life's over. That's it, it's done. I'm done. I work with children. I'm a safeguarding officer. Like, what do I do? And what was interesting is I phoned the person who I was about to go and work for on this 4-day thing, and she said, "Deb, they've been complaining about you for the last 4 days. It's 3 of them. It's 2 women and a man, but we don't know who the man is." And I said, "But what are they saying?" "Well, they already know that I'm the kink shrink. They already know that I'm connected. They've been saying that that makes you a paedophile." And I said, "Okay, but what are you doing?" She went, "We've got your back. We know you've been honest with us. That does help. And that we will." She was amazing. She was completely supportive of mine and did it. What I then found out, it was a coach who does psychology who wanted the job. That had done it all. And so there's always someone who's going to use something against you. The power goes away when it's gone. If you watch, like, if you've seen 8 Mile with Eminem, okay, I'm really old.
Keep going.
Love it.
I like the reference.
So if you watch the end of 8 Mile, what you've got is you've got this, so I'm going to use expressive words, you've got white trailer trash boy, right? So that is not what I think, that is the whole premise of the film. Whose mum takes drugs, who's abusive, and it's a little bit of an autobiography, really. His rival slept with his girlfriend under the desk in the and there's all this stuff going on. And he's just about to go into a rap battle with another lad, and this is a local lad. But this lad looks like he's from the hood, and he's really down with it, and he's really local, and he's in gangs, and you think, oh, he's impoverished and things aren't good. But you watch him get into this real luxury car, and it turns out he's gone to this beautiful school. So you think when you watch the rap battle at the end, that what's going to happen is Eminem's going to say, "You ain't fucking who you say you are. You're rich. You shouldn't be here." Whatever. He doesn't. He says, "Here you go," and he gives them everything. "I am a piece of trash. This is my life. This is how it is." Now look, anyone who's really good at any form of rap or poetic or like anything like that would be able to come back with something. But in this film, it kind of chokes the guy because he's like, "I don't know what to say. Because I can't have a go at you about anything because you just said it all." And it's quite a good principle in life. Now, not everyone will be able to do that because of their work and the things that they do. However, if you have things like ADHD or different things, then you have protected rights as a disability. You have different protected rights and things that you can ask for. Kink, but your sexuality is one of those things, but kink is not classed as a sexuality yet. It's not that far away. When we're talking about genetics, whether you're born or made this way, there is proof that it is epigenetic and genetic, but it takes maybe something in your life to trigger it. Fetishes are different. Fetishes are created when you are a child. You're not born with a fetish. A fetish is created. So if you've got a particular penchant for heels or for leather or for latex, it came from somewhere. If you imagine worms being inside you, if you want to be stung by bees, if you have these sort of different things, they are often created by a small environment that you had at any one time that you felt slightly sexual about when you were younger. So fetishes are slightly different to kinks and power exchange and everything else as well. Eventually, it won't happen in my lifetime, but in some of your lifetime, I honestly believe that kink will end up being proper sexuality. Because if you look at Richard Sprott's research, I would argue he's one of the best researchers about us for us. He's really starting to prove that shit. So that's coming through. So again, that will then be protected, but that's years away. You have to decide on your own risk. It's the same for all of you, about how out you want to be, about what pictures you put out there, about what you say. I will say this though, like I go to America once a year in cheerleading. These are not a good idea for you if you go through customs. Customs and excise have more power than any other form of police or that sort of, but they can, in America, they can demand to look at your phone as you go through customs. They have the right to. You sign for that. If you've got shit on your phone that is illegal because of a bruise or piss or fisting or any of those things that come in as slightly illegal, yeah, no.
Some advice specifically on that we had at work is back up everything, encrypt it online, wipe the device so it's factory fresh. Walk through customs, you can inspect it, here's the codes, here's everything. As soon as you're through, if they touched it, you wipe it again, restore from the backup in the new country.
Yeah.
Over a VPN if you're needing
Completely,
to.
if you're
But
really
then
careful.
be prepared to be open book
And
because
it
this
is
is a really
America
boring.
mainly.
Yeah, but also Middle East can be problematic
Yes.
as well for some of them.
I mean, I think I remember even being, I'm going back to Egypt, I want to be in Egypt, I met this really lovely couple. And I said, oh, how long have you been together? And they went, how did you know? And I went, God, I'm really sorry if I tread on your toes. And they said, no, it's really lovely that you've noticed that we're a couple. But they were both scared. I said, girls, you've got matching towels, you've got matching shoes, you're not sisters. Everything. You're even wearing the same bikinis. And they were like, oh no, we really like that though. And they said, but we're just really scared because it's Egypt. And I said, are you just staying in the hotel? You're like, funny enough, this is something I know quite a lot about. I always attract people who need something like that. And we had really good conversations and they just put at ease and they started to hold hands. They had the most amazing time. However, they weren't going to hold hands going out of the hotel. They weren't. You want to go to Dubai or anywhere else, or you want to think, oh, this is fine here, I can do this. Fucking think again. I think you have the right to do whatever you want to do where you do it. I'm not going to fucking test that in Abu Dhabi. I'm not going to stalk my girlfriend on the street or fucking the gyms. If I've got, no matter the gender of my partner, I've got the right to, but I don't want to be in one of their jails for the next 6 years. Do you? I can't. Look, do I believe we should fight? Yeah, I was on those original Pride marches. Anyone here go to Pride now? It's lovely, isn't it? It's glitter, it's glitz, quite a lot of drugs. A lot of glitter, a lot of fun. You might get the odd stabbing or you might get the odd thing. Anyone here go to Pride in the 80s? Absolutely horrific. Very different feeling. Believe me, fear. Excitement and camaraderie and togetherness. You're walking through London, but you're being kettled. You're worried about the police. You're worried about the skinheads. Fuck me, you are worried about those skinheads. Huh? Spat at. So much fit. Shocking. Like, it makes my heart race thinking about it because I was scared. I don't get that on Pride nowadays. So do I believe you should fight for your rights? Yeah, I fucking do. I think you should know your history. I say this to my daughter, I've got a rainbow family. I've got dead straight, dead queer, I've got everything in my family and I love that. But my youngest and I talk about this a lot. She knows her history. She knows all about where she comes from and what that meant and who fought for her rights. I love that about her. Because then we can also argue when someone says to you, oh, that's not right. Well, actually, it's really lovely to be able to have a conversation, not to have a go at someone else, to be able to talk to them and listen and dispute.
Just sort of following on from that, you talked a bit about judgment and being able to have those discussions and being open. And like that's something that I'm looking to do, is be more open with family. Like most of my friends already know, but it's difficult when, what's your advice when you're dealing with people who are very close to you, but you know hold certain views about the lifestyle that you live?
Prejudices.
Yeah.
So lots of people do hold prejudices. Prejudices you're not born with. Prejudices are created through our life environment. Look, epigenetically, could you have something going on? So I'm going to pick on myself as a Jewish woman, so I'm going to use some pretty bad phrases here. I'm sorry if they offend anybody, I'm using them on purpose, right? So if you grow up with a mum or dad who don't like all those fucking Yids and Jews, and she lives in Golders Green, I mean, move, woman, you're in the wrong place, right? But she's walking as a group of Orthodox Jews. What will happen to that child is taught by the parent that Jewish people are bad. They're not very nice. They're very tight with money. They've all got big noses. They're probably all related to vampires. Because the original vampires were quite anti-Semitic if you look at the history. I fucking love a vampire movie. It's a real contradiction. It's like, oh man, I'm just going to masturbate the thought of that. But does that make you feel ashamed and guilty? Yes. So, yeah, exposure at worst. So that's not enough to contaminate me, however. I have to have the experience on top. So, of course, if mummy is not very nice about whoever she's walking past, and she says a name, and that person gets offended and tells her, who the fuck are you talking to? Don't do that to me, which she has the right to, or he has the right to, or they have the right to. As a child, I'm like, oh, fuck, mum's right, they're really bad people. We don't see that mummy's not a bad thing. We experience a bad thing. So we can decontaminate human beings. It takes time, it takes conversations. There is a fucking beautiful film about this, whereby, oh my god, I wish I remember the name of it. Anyone on Google quickly? So it's a beautiful film. It's from the 1970s or 80s. It's a true story. And it's about a community where there is still segregation, quite badly in the schools, pre-60s, 70s, maybe it's 60s. Quite bad segregation still. And the school for black children is completely burnt down and it's a mess. So they have this meeting. It's called a shall, it's a French word for this specialised meeting, and they bring this person in. You've got a guy here, white, middle-aged, middle class, head of the Ku Klux Klan. He's already done a shit ton of stuff that is really horrible in this film. And you've got this amazing, intelligent, capable black woman who's just all about conversation. And what basically happens is they have to vote as to whether the children can go into an integrated system. Now, the Ku Klux Klan are fucking trying to kill everybody, trying to stop this from happening. True story. She is so fucking nice. His child has got a problem in a hospital. She's connected to the hospital. She makes sure that child goes into its own room. No prejudice against the dad. Nothing. Totally beautiful. She helps and she supports. And what's really interesting is through this film, as you watch their relationship grow, because it does grow, he ends up voting for integration. Through kindness, through acceptance, he completely changes. Do I think you should have to explain to anyone? No, that's your right. You shouldn't have to explain anything to anyone. I don't owe you an explanation of Jewish culture or Jewish history at all. Fucking work it out for yourself. However, if I want to connect with you, I'm willing to do that, because that's always going to have a better outcome than me just trying to, I'll come back to you in 1 second. And what's beautiful about this film is the whole white community turned its back on him. Not all of them, but all his mates, because all his mates wore sheets for a fucking living. And what's beautiful is they went on to do these, and they became best friends. And they best of enemies, thank you, that is a film. And it's a true story. They went to university together, they did stuff. It's about conversation. It's about accepting some prejudice. There was a beautiful thing online recently, I don't know if any of you saw it, where you had a trans guy, and this real southern mama, redneck cod mom, really went for him, because she said, you people, my fucking daughter is wearing bandages around her breast because of you, y'all should be shot. Like, really shocking. And he completely engaged. I loved him, and he said, I'm so sorry, that must be really frightening for you that your daughter is binding. Can I ask what she binding with? She was like, bandages, and he said, that's really going to damage her. Can I ask you kind of what size she is? I will send you a proper wrap, so I'll make sure that she is safe. She just kept going. She just kept going. And he just kept going. And in the end, she said, thank you very much, been mighty fine and mighty kind. And she learned something. I'm not saying that's easy. Be knowledgeable, but you're going to have, if you want a connection with somebody, no, if you don't want a connection, fuck them. Let them do their own work. But if you want a connection with somebody, it is going to take some work from you. It is going to take some discussion. But also, it's because people imagine the worst. Oh, you're kinky. Oh, okay, so you're tied up in a dungeon somewhere with 3 dogs and 25 human beings, and everything's going to happen, and it's going to be absolutely awful. God, no. That's not what I do. Next week, however. But so that's the problem. So by discussion, what you've got to remember is 6% of the UK are LGBTQI, right? 6%. However, when it comes to kink, it's more like 80 plus. Now, I don't mean that you have welts coming off your ass because you were Singapore Canes last night. I mean the people that go into Ann Summers and turn left. I don't know if it is left. It's just first class flights, maybe. It might be left, right? Or middle, okay.
Yeah,
Of course. 6 circle in the middle. Oh, Jesus, that's a bit threatening, isn't it? Everyone can see me. Is this a good crop? No, probably not. We did bring out a silver load after 50 Shades of Grey. It was quite pretty. Right, so lots of people do try this stuff. Most people have tried a small spanking or a little bit of control or a little bit of fun. Anyone here really inexperienced in kink? Okay. Have you kind of tried something a little bit though, which you would consider on the kinky spectrum, yeah? In some way, shape or form. So you've done something. Now, I'm not saying that you are in a fucking hog tie being held up and with something in every hole, right? We're not talking about that. Because everyone's idea of extreme is very different to everyone's idea of what is quite common, what is generally done. And most people like kinky sex. And you have to remember, kinky sex goes back to Mesopotamia. There is proof that kinky sex has happened all the way through the ages. It's not new, it's not original, we're not clever, we haven't found anything fucking the beginning of time. It's always been around. There's proof. There's some really good books about the proof of it. And that's something you can do. Say, look, I really understand that you might jump to some conclusions. So what I want to say is, I would love to talk to you about this. I would love to have an open conversation. And you might have some ideas against me. So like, I find what I get a lot is, oh, you're not a feminist then, are you? If you like to be told what to do by a man. What I have is the choice to be told what to do by a man. Believe me, I'm pretty fucking out there when it comes to my rights. But if I choose not to, I brought up these 4 independent women who are amazing, and actually 2 of them have chosen to be kinky. Have they chosen, or are they because of me? Or is it that Darcy worked out how to work out those 2 magnetic locks and nick the story of her when she was 11? You will never know.
And she did the comment.
But she did read it. I honestly, she opened every cupboard I fucking got. So she looked at my toys when she was 11. Would that have influenced her? Yes. Did I take every precaution for her not to? Yes. But you know, shit happens. Now, with older girls, I've just got some wool around it, and I've got this lovely slate thing that says open at your own fucking risk. So I have said to them, you know, don't go through my phone in the olden days. Don't do, like, it's up to you, but they're adults, it's different. If you have someone with an extreme prejudice, is it easy to change their mind? No. It's been ingrained for years. And it can have been ingrained for generations. It's really hard to get people out some of that thinking. Am I willing to have a conversation with them? Yes. Are you?
I've tried.
You tried. So if you tried
On other things, not on this particular issue, but with other things, and it feels like you get somewhere and then it just reverts back to the same way the next time.
Yeah.
You sort of give up a little bit, which is the wrong thing to do.
No, I don't think it is. If it's costing you too much out of life, give up on it. Look, if you could take that balance and accept that. Yeah. Look, I think it's really hard, but sometimes you can't convince people that you're right. You can't always ask for closure. We can't make people feel differently or do different things. Sometimes we have to say, this isn't my fight. Sometimes. Now, am I like that? No. I'm definitely that person who's going to stand in. If I see racism, anti-Semitism, anti-queer, anti-whatever, I'm the one saying, I'm the one there who's definitely going to get in trouble. On the tube, on a train, anywhere, I'm definitely that person that's probably going to be stabbed. But it hasn't happened yet, and I've done it for years. So, but you have to choose. What choice can you live with is a really big question. If you want them to come over to your way of thinking, it's probably never going to happen 100%. If you want to become educated, the problem is it's you who wants them to become educated. They don't give a flying fuck. The amount of people that turn and say to me, oh, my mum or my dad or my sister or my brother really need to come and see you, they've got a drinking problem. Sorry, they've got to want to come. It's just not going to work unless they choose to come. And to try and change someone's mind about something. I remember having a guy in my room who was, oh my God, complete and utter, really strong incel. I felt like I had to wash the covers and everything when he left. And I chose not to see him again because the stuff that was coming out of his mouth was, it's not my job to change him and he doesn't want to. And I said, I think you need to go and see a male therapist. I'm not going to see him. It's not always my fight. You were going to say?
I was just interested, sorry, slightly change of topic. It's quite interesting that you mentioned ADHD.
Yeah.
Dealing with impulsivity. I think I also have ADHD. Just wondered what your thoughts were on that. Or
so I'll come back to you, I promise. So dealing with ADHD and impulsivity is actually really quite simple because it is about learning just to take a few seconds and a little bit of extra time so we can build up really slowly. Clearly, there are medications we can take. Any form of amphetamine or speed is a similar principle because I'm not recommending you go and clearly take speed and amphetamine as a form, but there's a real shortage of ADHD meds around the world as well at the moment. So if you have ADHD, you can't always get your script filled. So that's happening. But impulsivity is an absolute need for a dopamine hit. Everything about ADHD is related to dopamine. So then it becomes, how else can I get my dopamine hit? I need to get a task done. And I think saying yes to ADHD is a superpower rather than saying no. You can buy that, you can have it, and first of all, you're going to clean the toilet. I cleaned the toilet, I've got a dopamine hit. What was I going to buy? I can't remember. Right, so, and that can really help us. And I have ADHD. It is, it's horrible. So that dopamine hit can really help us. So get your dopamine from somewhere else, get those systems in place. My house is so fucking tidy and extreme. It's not a complete mess. Why? Because I've gone hyper instead of hypo. And honestly, if I showed you a picture of my kitchen, it's really shocking how orange it is. Because everything is orange. And I really have to watch it. So also take away apps and ease of buying. Sometimes take your card facilities out of your phone. Start check. So everything takes a little bit more time. Where else can you get the dopamine? What else are you going to do to get that in that moment? Cold showers, different things really help with dopamine every day. When you're in the shower, fucking turn it on to freezing. Spend a few minutes. Not if you're going to get hypothermia, clearly. Not if you've got rosacea, because your face will just go boom. There are lots of things you can do to get dopamine that are not related to buying.
It's more in the moment if you're doing stuff with people.
The more you train yourself, that's what, it takes time. And if you think you've got ADHD, get yourself an ADHD coach if you can, because ADHD coaches are great at this, especially if we've had it or we work on it. It's just getting into the practice of things. It takes over 100 days, it takes 90 something days. I've got 2 people over there. Sorry? Lots of ADHD websites. I love ADD, the magazine. It's an international magazine. It's so good with the facilities that it has. It's got so much there. But I would also argue, if you are a cis-born woman or an AFAB, I fucking hate all these words, but I have to define, if you were born with a vagina and you were brought up as a girl, the likelihood of you masking ADHD is way higher. And the symptoms of ADHD are totally different to men and to different situations. And what you'll find is a lot of women, older ADHDers, regardless of what we identify as, will have different symptoms in that time. Rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria, impulsivity, but certainly for ADHD, fully adult women. It won't just be the untidiness and the other things. It will also be things, actually, you'll find that you don't want to do that because there's a rule about it, or you're not going to do this, but when you are passionate about something, boy, can you see it through. So no one better to ask. Because when you're in that headspace with ADHD, you have just made 5,000 pieces overnight to make sure it's on the website. So it's about the passion for something. So if your passion is also, I want to learn to look after myself, make that your passion. Because you're less likely to be impulsive. It's just changing it. I'll come back to you in 1 minute. You had your hand up at the very back.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, so I am an ADHD as well, and I think people are a massive source of dopamine.
Yeah.
And these situations, keep us dopamine. How do you kind of manage the whole starting new relationship with people and not being like fully ADHD and then getting so invested? And then
Oh, you're married? You're having 3 children tomorrow. I guess.
Most people don't like that.
No, it's funny that. And they are the love of your life, and it's all really intense. It's look, for me, because I love myself, if I'm my own passion, where I go with that is, I understand that's how I feel. I understand it's ADHD, and you're going to have to prove it to me. I'm going to have to prove it to me. Because when you meet people who will feed into that, whether they love bomb you or do different things, let's not just say it's narcissists, because everybody love bombs to a certain extent, especially up front. Well, all those chemicals, like oxytocin, that's what you're after in that moment. So actually, for me, I know that those chemicals are hitting. Awareness really helps, but it's also about, and I'm just going to give that phrase 24 hours. I'm just going to see that. And that's easier said than done. I've learned to do that. It's taken me fucking years. So I'm not saying it's just going to happen. And it does take time, but it's also about understanding that the instance isn't true. The instance is the chemicals talking to you. And to be able to disassociate slightly and to say, I still want that. It's really heady. It's really lovely. Well, that person still felt that way. Because what you find is in a few weeks, it's not as bright and shiny as it was. It's not as sparkly as it was. And I always give myself a little bit of time. Honestly, with my ADHD and relationships, I turn around and say 6 months. If you are still sparkly to me in 6 months, we're going to be really good. Because I will give you everything, especially as I'm submissive as well. I have a really good time. So that's my worth. What's in it for me is one of my favourite phrases. I'll come back to you in 1 second because you had your hands up, and then I'll come back to you as well.
So this might be a moderate topic. So I'm a man. I'm new to kink, and I'm new to also kind of being single. And the 2 dominant things that kind of are like in my head and in my world at the moment are of fear and shame. Fear of being a threat, being creepy or hurting others, and shame about wanting the things that I want because of the environment I've grown up. I'm just Any thoughts?
I've got such an urge to come give you a hug.
Okay. Do you know what? Straight away, good. Right? As long as that is, I already fucking like you. The fact that you're worried about your impact on me really matters. When we worry about that stuff, we're aware of it. That is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. And it's a good thing in our community. Do I think life is fair at the moment? No, I think life is pretty fucked up for everybody in every way. Whoever we are, there's always something going on and wrong. You are not alone in your fear. I love that you are a little bit frightened. I'm sorry that you are frightened. I'm sorry that it really impacts you, and I can feel your sadness from here under the floor, something chronic. So breathe out more than you breathe in. Breathe in for 4, just breathe out for 7. Just that simple thing can really help. So breathe in for 4 again, and just breathe out for 7. Look, if we have something that is shame-based, that's very different to feeling guilty or bad about stuff, especially if we get into killed. A lot of little boys are taught not to hit women. Did any little boys here have that? Don't hit a woman, don't hurt a woman. Who fucking loves hitting and hurting a woman, though? Or a man. I don't give a shit. Or trans, or the gender is irrelevant, but it's the teaching that's the problem here. Undoing shame takes a long time. The antidote to shame is compassion. And if you are worried about that, you are going to check consent. You are going to worry about that. I've got massive writings on consent and negotiations. Have a read. Everything is in there that you need to know. And also, we have to understand that each person we're with has to take a risk. It is always a risk. It is also a risk for you. If you want to make sure you are protected, I would personally advise that you have to keep everything on text, that you agree with somebody else that you want to keep a record of it, because it's really important for both of your safety, especially if you're agreeing stuff. That will all help as well. However, shame is much more difficult to combat. If you can talk to someone, if you can go to workshops, if you can, there are lots of male shed type groups, even in kink nowadays, which I really approve of. Men need a space to talk in just as much as any other form of gender that we have, especially around this when it comes to the damage that can be done because of the fear and guilt and the shame that you feel. It's really important to understand that it's really common. Like, unfortunately, the biggest killer of young men is still suicide. That has not changed yet. So it's really important that men talk. It's really important that they have people to talk to. There are some great men around you who will definitely talk and help. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I think something in one of your chats before, where someone asked something about what's the psychopathy and what the cute stuff and stuff like that. You're scared of it.
Yeah, you need to be like that.
Processing the thought about it.
The process that you've thought about. Look, I get scared every time I come and do a workshop. I think, will I know the answers? Will anyone turn up? Will I be okay? And a lot of that is also excitement. So a lot of us have been taught that anxiety is a condition, whereas actually it's okay to be nervous. It's just wearing the anxious t-shirt inside out. You might also be slightly excited, but we tend to pathologize excitement into anxiety all the time. There is an element of that as well. The fact that you care matters. When I stop caring, when I walk in here and I think the room's going to be full and I'm going to be fine and I fucking know everything, is the day I stop. Welcome to, honestly, feeling those things and feeling okay about it. Let me ask, right? So, you do not have to answer this. And you can. What's your sexuality?
Straight.
Straight. Okay. Any straight women here? Well, no. Or women who also sleep with men as well. Then even if like that queer, heteroflexible, whatever. Would you rather have a straight man who questions what he does in kink or doesn't give a flying fuck? Cares. Anyone else cares? See my point? So have conversations. Don't jump into things. Don't be fast. Don't make reckless decisions. Take your time, and it'll be all right. And have a plan for when it goes wrong, because it will go wrong. I really think we should ask men and women and trans and non-binary. We should ask humans what your fucking plan is for when it goes wrong. Have something in your head. Protect yourself. No one else is going to. The fact that you care really matters. You were going to ask as well.
My question was back to ADHD, or not complete a question. I have ADHD and I've been actively treating it myself and reading and researching about it and talking to people who has ADHD as well. And what I found working on the real is detoxing, like dopamine detoxing, like avoiding everything which gives me the instant high.
Yeah.
And just choosing something which I actually work for.
It's withdrawal,
Yes.
your own form of withdrawal, absolutely. There's also some recent research in America into saffron. So saffron as a natural don't eat a load of fucking saffron.
It's actually very expensive.
I'm waiting with interest to see what comes over, and I've just found a company that sells saffron sticks, it's called, for children, and it helps with their mental clarity, and I've just asked if they'll send them to the UK, because I want to try them. I want to see. I've done all sorts of drug-related things to see what helps and what doesn't. I think that's very genetic as well. So my daughter's had 2 ketamine infusions because she has a permanent pain condition called hypermobility spectrum disorder, or AIDS, for a lot of people don't know it. And she's permanently pain, chronic vomiting, joints popping out, all sorts of stuff. And the ketamine infusions can be a real answer for people with serious depression and or chronic pain. It works on 70% of people. My microdosing and my all the stuff I've tried doesn't work when it comes to drugs, which is interesting, and it doesn't work on her. Genetics will definitely come into it one day. It has to. So I'm curious about that, but I'm curious about these sticks. I want to find out. You can say.
One is more back to around the drops that you were talking about. So I've been diagnosed with anxiety and OCD for probably about 13 years. Pretty sure it's related to ADHD as well.
Okay, so if you have ADHD, I can guarantee you that your OCD and your anxiety, well, I probably should say this out loud. No, they're comorbid. You don't have anxiety and OCD, you have ADHD with comorbidities, which are all about anxiety
It's what
and
they've been
OCD.
treating anyway, is anxiety and OCD,
Right.
because in my 30s, that was the kind of, or the diagnosis at the time, the symptoms that I had. And for me, like, I was in a relationship for the last 11 years, and so this is all new to me because I was with a very vanilla man, for lack of a better term. And so how do you deal with obviously you get some great highs that come with this, but I'm really struggling, and I don't know if it's just me, but really struggling with the lows that come like a day or two after.
Yeah, your drop will be worse than anybody else's if you are looking for the dopamine hit.
Yeah, it's awful.
Not worse than anybody else's. There's also, it is awful. I have a full writing on drop. You need to prepare for drop. You need to be aware of it. You can eat for drop. You need to make sure you eat protein. You need to make sure, like lots of people have, have sugar. Well, that will help.
Yeah,
3 minutes.
it's a pop tart.
You know,
Not good.
go straight down again. You need, like, if you're going to wake up and you, like, I don't know if you're a meat eater, but, get your protein in, get a good mixture of fats and protein, get a good mixture of your different vitamins and minerals, make sure you're eating really well overall. Do something. Don't sit with drop. Get up and do something. Do a little bit of exercise. So you're talking about withdrawal. Do something that gives you a little bit of something but doesn't take you to a high. A really nice walk or a little bit of something that just does something halfway between the two.
Sorry, how do you not over? Because you were talking about having a plan, which I love doing. I'm a project manager by trade, so I absolutely love it. So I love control, got about 10 plans for everything. How do you not over plan to drive yourself to the point of insanity, essentially?
What's your plan for no plan?
Have a plan.
So why don't
How do
you?
you get comfortable?
So why don't you do a plan for no plan?
That's a really good
It is, but it'd be really interesting to see where you go with it.
Okay.
Because when we pre-mortem, so when NASA pre-mortem, like when they send up an astronaut, what they tend to do is they teach anyone who goes up some engineering, because if you're going to go up as an astronaut, you have to do some base engineering wherever you go, and most, it's another bingo word, isn't it, pre-morteming? And it really matters. And what people tend to do is so they teach them to do this piece of engineering with both eyes open. Then they teach them with one eye shut, the other eye shut, and then they teach them with both eyes shut. So it's just easy, and you can do it. You all pre-mortem, when you go on holiday, or when your parents did, you might stop your newspapers if you still get them, or milk, or you might stop some kind of. So I still order milk. I really want to support the local milkmen and stuff like that. And I love the glass bottles for recycling, and that's in my bag, and that's one of the things I'm really into. But I have to remember to stop it. 300 bottles of milk is not a good look for the burgers. You have to think about it. You have to get insurance, don't you? I mean, I remember my family is Swiss, and we've got places over there as well. That sounds really pretentious. It's not like that. I'm talking about family. And what's interesting is when I took one of my youngest skiing when she was little, fuck me, we're all coming down black slopes. No, she dances in the kitchen and breaks her fucking wrist. Wasn't even skiing. So we do have to prepare for these things. We do have to think about these things because the costume is phenomenal. It's pre-mortem. What people tend to do is pre-mortem for every negativity. Pre-mortem for positivity. Pre-mortem for nothing. Pre-mortem if it all goes your way. And then see how that feels and see what you can work with and what you can start to test into. To have a plan for no plan and then execute it. So use your benefit to your benefit. It's a superpower. Use it for the positivity.
I think I'm in the same situation as you, and if I just try and stick to a couple of things a month, I'm not overdoing, I'm not underdoing. So I'm kind of keeping on my level. Kind of just really.
Yeah, however many skills you've got. But also, like, if you've got ADHD and you overplan, just doing a couple of things and ticking them off the list, even if it's making your bed or doing something.
I think I get with that other than the loneliness aspect. I hate being alone. I will overplan when not.
Right, so what you need to do is get onto websites. If you have ADHD, one of the most important things you can look at, I'm really where I've got finished.
Sorry.
One of the most important things you look at is body doubling. Body doubling. So ADHDers or people with anxiety or stress often don't want to do something alone. There are at least 2 apps and a couple of websites that allow you to body double. You'll be surprised that when someone else is around, how much you get done, especially if you've got something like ADHD, autism, different things, how much you need someone around to help you. So what they do is you set up and say, I need to do 3 hours of cleaning, and someone says, well, I'm doing 3 hours of yoga, and you both put your FaceTime print, and we'll go, oh my God, I couldn't do that. You'd be surprised. It's really impactful and effective. You don't watch each other do everything. That would be weird. But you're checking in every so often saying, oh yeah, no, oh good, oh great. And just knowing that somebody is there really helps us. So there are loads of apps. It's utterly proven in science that body doubling actually works. So if you're lonely and you can't get things done, look up the body doubling apps. Really effective.
Or just text someone again. It's like, can you text me in half an hour and ask if I've done it yet?
Yeah.
I call it accountability buddy.
Yeah. But also, the problem with accountability buddies, sometimes, I totally agree with you, is if someone else isn't available, and COVID really taught us that not everyone is available all the time. So how can I do this for myself? How can I use technology to help me? And body doubling is a fucking serious thing in ADHD. It's really good.
I think in the workplace, it's just having regular meetings with managers, because mine dropped out recently, and then my accountability just went out the window. I still got my job
So
done.
that's the problem. Your accountability needs to be to you.
Yeah.
It's how do you develop it? And I'm not saying that's easy, but mine is. I do retroactive lists to make myself feel good, especially when I'm like going through that withdrawal aspect of I made my bed, I did it. Not really on my list, but they're on because they make me feel better. I had a shower, I put clean knickers on or not, and all that sort of stuff. My soul goes, no, I didn't. So it's that sort of aspect. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for your time.